The
Quarterly
Billionaire was
returns
just
demonstrate
seconds away from
unprecedented growth,
finalizing a
positioning us
$100
as
million
market leaders for
deal
the next 5.
when a waitress leaned closer and softly said, "That's the wrong formula." What unfolded next not only rescued his entire empire, but also transformed her life forever. Lucas Grant was far from ordinary. He was a billionaire entrepreneur whose name commanded respect in every high-rise office and corporate boardroom. At only 45, he had turned GrantX Industries into a global titan, ruling everything from green energy to advanced medicine. People admired him, feared him, envied him, but most of all, they respected his accuracy. Because Lucas was never wrong, or at least that's what he believed. That Thursday night, the Imperial Grand Hotel buzzed with excitement. A private ballroom had been converted into a negotiation arena where Lucas was set to sign the biggest agreement of his life, a $100 million partnership with a European biotech corporation. The figures were breathtaking, the investors anxious, and the atmosphere heavy with pressure. Lucas straightened his tie as servers glided quietly around, refilling glasses and setting the final plates of hors d'oeuvres. He was midway through his presentation, laser-focused on the giant screen glowing behind him, when a small interruption sent everything off balance. That interruption wore a black apron and carried a tray. Her name was Emily Carter, a waitress working exhausting double shifts to pay her student debts. She wasn't meant to be anywhere near this gathering of corporate titans. Her duties were simple: refill, serve, smile, nothing else. Yet as she walked past Lucas's seat to top up his sparkling water, her eyes briefly landed on the formula he had written on the whiteboard, and her heart froze. Numbers and equations were part of Emily's soul. Once she had been a graduate student in biochemistry, dreaming of contributing to groundbreaking discoveries. But when her father became seriously ill, she left her studies behind to support her struggling family. The lab faded into memory, replaced by the clatter of dishes and cafe chatter. Still, in that single glance, instinct screamed inside her. Something's off. Emily froze for just a heartbeat, torn between fear and courage. Around her, investors in sharp suits nodded as Lucas confidently explained the synthesis process for a drug expected to cure a rare neurological disease. The formula was the core of the deal. And it was wrong. She leaned closer, her voice barely more than a whisper. "That's the wrong formula, sir." Lucas stopped mid-sentence. The air turned cold. Every head turned toward the waitress who had just interrupted a billionaire during a $100 million presentation. Lucas's sharp blue eyes narrowed as he looked at her, then at the equation. "Excuse me?" His voice carried the weight of a man not used to being challenged. Emily's heart pounded, but she forced herself to speak. "The sequence, you switched 2 variables. It won't stabilize. The compound will fail before replication." A nervous laugh rippled across the room. One investor scoffed, "Are we taking scientific advice from the catering staff now?" The Europeans exchanged uneasy glances. One leaned toward Lucas and asked in broken English, "Is this correct?" Lucas's pride burned hot. Every part of him wanted to dismiss her to protect his ego. But there was something steady and unshaken in Emily's eyes, a quiet certainty that defied logic. Against his instincts, he turned back to the formula and mentally rechecked his calculation. Then his chest tightened. She was right. The mistake was tiny, a single misplaced variable, but in biochemistry it was fatal. If the deal had been signed as written, the research would have collapsed within weeks, destroying not only the project, but his reputation. The room went dead silent as Lucas set down the marker. His hand gripped the podium, and for the first time in his career, he looked uncertain. He turned to Emily. "How do you know this?" Whispers filled the air. Emily stood tall, tray still in hand. "I was a grad student in biochemistry. I recognize the sequence. It can't hold." The investors exchanged astonished glances. Lucas said nothing for a moment. Then, with a slight smile, one that even surprised himself, he looked back at the Europeans. "Ladies and gentlemen, it seems we've just been saved from a disaster by someone far sharper than all of us combined." A few light chuckles broke the tension, but the respect in the room was undeniable. Lucas turned back to the whiteboard and, with Emily watching, corrected the formula. This time, everything aligned perfectly. The Europeans applauded softly, visibly reassured. The deal was salvaged, not because of Lucas's brilliance, but because of the waitress who had dared to speak up later that night. After the contracts were signed and the champagne glasses were raised, Lucas walked over to Emily, who stood quietly in the corner. She looked terrified, expecting to be fired. Instead, he extended his hand. "You saved me tonight. What's your name?" "Emily Carter," she said softly. "Emily," Lucas replied, his voice warm with rare humility. "I don't know what life pulled you away from, but brilliance like yours doesn't belong in the shadows. How would you like to work for Grant X? Not as a waitress." He paused with a smile. "But as part of our research team?" Her eyes widened, tears glimmering. "Are you serious?" "Completely," Lucas said with a grin. "Anyone who can outsmart me in front of $100 million shouldn't be serving trays." And in that moment, Emily's life changed forever. The girl who once gave up her dream now had it returned, because she had whispered 7 words that no one else dared to say.